Hello Internet, and welcome to Ramblings of a Madman. I'm Alex, and I'm joined by Sean and Stuart for a shallow and probably uninformed dive into the world of unexplained mysteries, conspiracy theories, and the supernatural. And before we start today, Stuart, have you got a story to tell any of our glorious listeners out there?
Tell the
Maybe
nice people the
that
story.
You've been,
maybe
something
no
you've been
idea what
doing for over a year now on this show.
I mean, actually, it's
noticed.
just under a year. I got my new microphone in August last year. And yes, okay, I did have it the wrong way round, and I'd been speaking into it the wrong way round for almost 12 months before I realised. But that doesn't count, and what they don't know can't hurt them. So, hopefully, things will sound better.
If anything, it just sounds like you bought a new microphone, right?
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I've upgraded to a new microphone by turning it the right way around. Who'd have thought it, eh?
Oh, I love that. It's amazing. Yeah, I also have an announcement to make. As some of you have realised this week, every episode of this glorious podcast is now available on Stitcher for all you Stitcher users out there. So head over there and search for Ramblings of a Madman, or go to our Twitter at Rome Podcast, where I've tweeted out the link. And as always, if you're enjoying our stuff, we'd appreciate a rating and review on Apple Podcasts. Right, so we're going to do part 2 now of our jaunty skip into
Please
Cuba.
say it's Castro Strikes Back.
Castro Strikes Back. No, unfortunately, this is post-Castro.
Oh.
This is a recent mystery from the country of Cuba.
Interesting.
So here we go. One night in November 2016, an American official working at the US Embassy in Cuba heard a strange piercing noise outside of his home. He felt intense pressure on the temples, which was followed by pain, nausea, and dizziness. He frantically searched around the house for the source of the sound, but was unable to find anything. Suddenly, he realised that the noise had disappeared as quickly as it had started. The next morning, the man woke up feeling ill. Although the sound from the previous night was gone, he still had a headache and felt dizzy. He told his neighbour, who also worked at the embassy. They said they had heard noises too, a mechanical grinding sound. A similar grinding sound suddenly awoke another American diplomat from his bed at the Hotel Nacional in Havana. He jumped from his bed and walked to the window, attempting to locate where the sound was coming from, but as he moved away from the bed, the sound stopped. He assumed he must have been imagining it, so he climbed back into bed, but once again the noise hit him. It was as if there was an invisible wall of sound cutting straight through the room. Soon after came lasting health issues, including speech problems and hearing loss. These are some of the first cases we have of a phenomenon known as Havana syndrome, an outbreak of mysterious injuries among American and Canadian embassy staff in Cuba, supposedly caused by an unexplained sound.
Ooh.
So this is a recent story. Have you guys heard of it before?
No.
No.
It was quite a big deal in the American press during, when Donald Trump was first put into place.
Okay.
So we're only talking 4 years ago, 3 years ago?
4 or 5 years ago, yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so what are your first thoughts about it?
I mean, it could be anything. That's what we're here to talk about, but it could be anything. When you say a piercing metallic sound, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could be anything.
Yeah, I mean, the initial thing that kind of came into my head was, initial thoughts when you said just hearing something suddenly. So the kind of first things that went through my head was something obviously actually electronic, like an alarm clock interference, like a radio alarm clock getting interference, or maybe even like a mosquito, to be fair. They make a really high-pitched noise, don't they? But then I was thinking, well, was it a real noise, or is it somebody having like tinnitus as part of their headache? Because migraines and stuff can give you all of that kind of stuff. And the way that the headache kind of suddenly came on, you kind of wonder whether or not it almost sounded a little bit migraine-y.
Yeah. Something to think about.
I think in terms of the fact that so was it on the same night that the two people heard it that you just described? Sorry.
It's unclear. These stories are kind of a bit classified because they're about diplomats in Cuba and stuff.
Okay. And
they've also been kind of twisted as the story's been retold. So those were two stories I picked from different news articles.
Sure.
And I don't know whether they're first-hand sources or whether they've been a bit mangled. So they might just be dramatised.
Yeah. Although it's weird the fact that you said that they had longer lasting health problems.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me think that it's less likely to be a migraine, for example. But if it was a mosquito and it bit them, not kind of like the Spider-Man origin story, but
Mosquito Man. It's
a bit shit, that, isn't it? I don't think it's going to make the cut.
Now you're saying that about like mosquitoes and stuff. Like it could be a swarm.
Yeah,
I'm kind of thinking like
swarms of mosquitoes.
Well, it might not be mosquitoes. It could be cicadas or I don't know.
Well,
locusts.
A plague of locusts descended upon a specific hotel room.
It was the first sign of the Antichrist.
Wait, did you say it was the same hotel room?
No, the first one was in the guy's house, and the second one was in a hotel room.
That's what I mean. So it would. How far away were the two?
I don't know. I know the second one was in the Hotel Nacional.
They're in Havana, though, aren't they?
I think so. I assume the other house is in Havana because they both worked in the embassy in Havana.
Okay, so Havana is, as far as I know, the capital city of Cuba.
Mm-hmm.
It'll be massive.
Supposedly.
Presumably, but I'm thinking that in terms of even if they're like a couple, if you had a hotel right next to a house, that's possible. But chances are they could be anywhere up to a couple of miles away from each other. So if there's, what am I trying to say? Like,
I think you're trying to say it might not be the same event causing the sound.
Well, no,
so
it could be.
Away.
What I'm saying is that it. Well, one thing I'm saying is why hasn't anyone else heard it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to pick up on then. If there's two accounts of this, were there any non-American diplomats who reported the same noise? Or is it both like kind of like local to those two people?
Other people have reported strange sounds.
So are these locals?
People in the embassy, the Havana embassy, people who work there.
Got you.
So it's specifically that something's not right about that. So it's specifically American diplomats.
It was Canadians as well.
Oh, okay, so but non-Cuban locals,
mm-hmm.
or non-native people. That's weird. That.
Mm-hmm.
So
well, it was initially American diplomats in Cuba, but since then there have been many similar incidents reported around the world, including China, Russia, Poland, Uzbekistan, and even on American soil in Washington, D.C. As of 2012, there have been over 130 cases of Havana syndrome reported amongst US officials across the globe. Individual cases vary considerably. Some reported high ringing or high-pitched sounds lasting for several minutes. Some felt intense vibrations, whilst others didn't experience any strange event, simply a list of strange symptoms. And these symptoms include headaches, nausea, dizziness, balance issues, concussion, memory loss, hearing loss, with one reported diplomat now requiring a hearing aid, and also tinnitus.
Okay. So it is definitely a physical sound then to make, loud enough to make people lose their hearing.
Supposedly, according to some people haven't heard a sound at all, they just got the symptoms.
You almost wonder if it's like something directionally focused.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know it's very filmy, but like when people sweep for bugs in programs and they're looking for like some sort of little microphone or camera or some sort of electronic device that's got some sort of microchip in it, you wonder whether or not that's what is producing a noise aimed at a specific target. That's the kind of vibe that you're, I think, giving off.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely sort of like a espionage spy vibe going on, especially since we now know the history of Cuba with the US, complicated history.
It's almost like you led up to this episode, Alex.
Yeah, it's definitely why I did that. What we did in the last episode. We definitely didn't rate assassination plots using the Robot Wars system.
Okay, one thing I'm thinking of in terms of why some people got symptoms but they didn't actually hear it is if it's a high enough metallic sort of screech, you might not be able to hear it if you can't hear that frequency.
Yeah, good shout. If you're old,
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
do you have a rough idea of the age range of the diplomats, or is that that's probably classified, isn't it? To be fair.
Yeah, and there's so many of them.
Yeah,
and each story is like so wildly different.
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot of very vague symptoms there as well.
Yeah.
So, a lot of the headache, nausea, tinnitus, vertigo-y kind of symptoms, they all sound like you could just have like a traveller's bug and be a bit under the weather from travelling halfway across the world and be a bit sleep deprived, having been on an aeroplane that's going for 12 hours plus, potentially if you're going to China. You just wonder whether or not some of these are just people who are feeling under the weather, who just get something happening, like an ear infection or a cold from the air conditioning or whatever, and just get a lot of virally vague-ish symptoms with it. And whether or not I suppose it's a bit bold to say that the noise is coincidence, but you wonder if the noise is perhaps more of a symptom of something else rather than something real. That's kind of what I'm wondering.
Could be a completely unrelated event. And they just happen to get COVID, early COVID.
Early COVID, yeah. Cube
Beer COVID.
Damn it. My joke was wasted because you spoke over it.
Yeah, so although the range of symptoms reported are diverse, overall they're consistent with what is often seen in head injuries. However, medical teams investigating Havana syndrome have found no evidence of concussion in brain scans. They stated that most patients had conventional image findings, which were within normal limits. The few scattered anomalies could be attributed to other pre-existing disease processes or risk factors. So does that medical jargon sound reasonable to you, Stuart?
Yeah, it's a bit interesting that they've investigated them for the symptoms. So there must be enough of a concern raised by the...
Oh, there was definitely concern raised.
Yeah.
This was big in the press.
Yeah, I was going to say, because if I said to you, oh, I've just flown halfway across the world and I feel a bit achy and a bit sore and a bit headachy and I'm a bit tired, and I heard a bit of ear ringing that's now gone, you're going to be like, cool, I'm glad you got there safe. Not, let me get you a brain scan. That's not like the first thing that's going to come to your head.
No, but so the initial thing was they had, I believe, 24 embassy officials come forward with similar symptoms, which is what triggered all the studies and stuff. And then since then, there's been up to 130 around the world.
Jeez, okay.
Similar cases.
I mean, it's still not massive numbers considering how many people fly halfway across the world. But
no, it's not. But it's the fact that these are US embassy officials in foreign countries.
Yeah, I still wonder, though, whether or not there's a case of it might just be something benign, that now there's attention focused on it. People are coming forward with symptoms that they would never have gone forward with because they happen to know that other people have been investigated for the same.
I mean, surely the stories we do on the show can't be completely rationable explanations at all. It has to be something crazy, right?
Yeah.
It can't just be like benign, everyday things.
It was geese.
It was geese. The rare Havana geese.
I need more information.
Yeah, okay, so
I'm
that's...
completely speechless at the moment. Not speechless.
That's sort of the history of the main story. So I've got a load of possible explanations for it. So I'll move on to those, I guess, and we can discuss each one.
Sound.
So the first thing, and this is the big one that the press was all about. So, as you can probably guess, 2016 America, Trump's just come into office. The world's going a bit crazy at this point. There's all sorts of political crap going on. And given the history between the US and Cuba, obviously the first reaction to these incidents was some sort of attack against their embassy, right?
Yeah.
So they dreamed up some sort of sonic attack which was going on.
I mean, I think that's possible. Like, it sounds... You're saying there's more than just, obviously, American diplomats that were...
I mean, there were Canadian diplomats as well, and there isn't really a rocky history between Cuba and Canada. So that kind of...
It adds a bit of weight to it, doesn't it?
No, if anything, it lowers the fact that it might be an attack from Cuba. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, because Canada have a good relationship.
Yeah.
Okay.
but the majority were American diplomats.
Why would they do it on their home soil, though, as well?
Because it's closer and it's easier to...
Because they can, than just doing it in the... Yeah, that's a stupid question. Yeah. Because they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't just go to America and do it, because if they got caught doing that, then there'd be issues.
It would be even worse, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think it would be a declaration of war, wouldn't it? Attacking...
Yeah.
Sonic attacks.
Yeah. And the idea, though, of there being like a focused noise heard by specific people, are you sure it's just not somebody with a dog whistle? Like, just casually walking down the...
I mean, I'm not sure of any of this.
Hotel corridors and just going...
Would that
It could totally be that.
Okay, I was going to say, it'd give you a fucking headache, but it wouldn't make you lose your hearing.
Mm-hmm. So, acoustic weapons do exist, and they've seen some limited use by military and police. There's a thing called LRAD, Long Range Acoustic Device, and it's used mainly in crowd control, and it sends out extremely high decibel and or high frequency tones across a wide area to cause ear pain, and basically like disperse crowds. But the problem with it is because sound dissipates very quickly, you have to make the initial sound very loud so it can still do damage by the time it reaches the target. These are also very large devices, often hundreds of pounds and usually mounted on vehicles.
It's quite cheap, that.
Just hundreds of pounds. It's got a good market rate.
Mm-hmm. So the point is, if they use a device such as this, they're really big and you wouldn't be able to conceal it very well, like outside of someone's house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you guys remember infrasound from Dyatlov Pass?
Just give us a reminder.
Vaguely. So these are low-frequency sound waves that can't be heard by humans. Anything below 20 Hz can result in a number of physical ailments such as pain, nausea and fatigue. So maybe some sort of infrasound weapon? It would fit the symptoms somewhat.
Although they wouldn't... Why would they have heard a high-pitched noise if they were being targeted with low frequency?
Maybe they were just mistaken.
Perhaps, yeah, there is that. It's just a bit strange, isn't it? You think... And I suppose unless it was a mix of frequencies... It may have been impulses, so like lots of low frequency noises to make them feel under the weather, and then a short burst of something high pitched to try and do some quick harm before going back to something that they can't hear.
The first guy described it as a mechanical grinding sound. He didn't mention the pitch at all.
So that makes me think of like a saw. That kind of whirring.
But it could be. I don't know, actually, because I don't know what sort of frequency they'd use for a sound cannon. But when you said the LRAD, that would be low, you said, right?
It's high frequency for the LRAD. But the important thing about it is it's high decibel, it's very loud.
Other people would have heard it, wouldn't they? That's the crucial bit of that, is that other people would have reported it. Well, yeah, if you had some sort of laser pointer
way to focus it
on it, yeah.
Yeah, but the problem with infrasound is that there's no known acoustic devices that use infrasound in the world at the moment, so it'd have to be some sort of like experimental tech that we don't know about.
Which
is always possible, and it's really hard for us to argue for or against, isn't it? But you have to fancy that they've got it.
Yeah, there's definitely a possibility that we're in one of the countries that doesn't have new technology.
Well, I would imagine it's less likely to be we don't have it rather than it's not disclosed that we have it.
Yeah, but I feel like if America knew what it was, well, I don't know, actually, yeah, because America might have it as well. But then if it's diplomats, surely they'd have more like, declaration of secrecies. What's it called? Non-disclosure agreements. No, that's for games. What's the when you sign a non-disclosure agreement? That's the sort of thing that I'm on about. They'd have
like
things
signing the
in place
Official Secrets Act.
Official Secrets Act. Yeah, there you go. That's the British one, isn't it? I don't know what it would be for America, but it's the same sort of thing. Like, I feel like they'd all signed up to that. Like, if it was something that could be experimental, I feel like the FBI would have shut it down straight away and been like, right, we know about this. Don't say anything. We'll just look after you.
Yeah.
Unless
It's the fact that
I feel
it's
like they'd
become a
be
bit more
trained
public,
to
isn't it?
not make it public first.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. It would be more hush-hush, wouldn't it?
Yeah, another problem with infrasound, as we've kind of covered already, is it's difficult to focus on a small area. So generally more people in the area would be affected by it, rather than just like one guy in his house.
Yeah.
So how about ultrasound? These are really high-pitched sounds, over 20 kilohertz. These are easier to focus, but they can't cause damage to the inner ear unless it's at very high decibels.
Which it would be.
Well, no, it wouldn't be, because otherwise other people would have reported it.
Yeah, people in the area would have heard it as well.
It's definitely not localizable. If that's a new word I've made up, then...
With the technology we know about at the moment, no, it's not.
Okay.
Yeah, because I use ultrasound at work to scan various bits and bobs, and the depth that you get with the scanner is not massive. So obviously, you remember your physics bit, wavelength and frequency are inversely proportional. So if you've got
I remember that.
quite long,
Yeah.
long wavelength, you're not going to have much frequency. So in terms of getting the frequency in the ultrasound spectrum to get a significant range is quite difficult. Like our scanner, I think, goes to like 30 centimeters or something like that. Like it's not
right.
So it would have to be, he'd have to be looking at it. Like it would almost have to be like he goes to the bathroom mirror and is having a shave in the mirror and the object is behind the mirror. And even then, it's not conducted very well.
Mm-hmm.
It needs a medium to do it, which is obviously why they put jelly down on pregnant bellies, for example, to scan them. Like it needs
Right.
it needs something to transmit sound. It doesn't go very well through air. You don't really get to see much.
Yeah, but it's a lot easier to focus, isn't it? You can do a small...
Yeah,
of the body.
it's like a tiny slither of space, but it's really, really narrow. So you'd have to have it aimed. I think that would, the main argument to that is that it would need to be aimed and therefore need to be in close proximity. So unless it was built into something, like a lamp at the side of the bed, for example. Was the guy asleep? Did you say he woke up with the headache? Oh, I just made that up.
The guy in the hotel was apparently asleep, yeah.
He was asleep, yeah. So the noise woke him up. So it's weird that no one else obviously spoke about being woken up. It just means the proximity has to be so close.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so as you've basically covered already, projecting ultrasound over large distances or through material is very difficult. And again, like a infrasound device, it wouldn't be very concealable. You'd have to kind of have like a big device, most likely. They did search for devices at both scenes, but no acoustic device was ever found at sites where diplomats have reported strange sounds.
Which doesn't mean much, but...
No, it just means they haven't found it.
Yeah, or it was removed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't imagine it was a very quick search afterwards. It was probably like weeks after.
Was there anything mentioned about where they felt the sound was coming from? Because if the sound is loud enough, it might be disorientating and you might not be able to work out where it's coming from. But did anyone realize it was coming out of a window, or did they just hear it in their heads?
That's a really good question.
The first guy looked around his house for the source of the sound, but he couldn't find where it was coming from. And then the guy in the hotel said it was focused over his bed. So he walked over to the window and he couldn't hear it anymore. And then when he walked back to the bed, he could hear it as if it was like a wall of sound cutting through the room.
Okay, that's been planted.
That's a bit more interesting, though, for the...
I'm glad I asked that question.
There being something focused, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A wall of sound. It might be
so the second
into
one...
the beam.
Sounds a lot like a sound beam, doesn't it?
Yeah. Which would fit with ultrasound, because it is generally...
It would, but it wouldn't cover a whole room, like you said, like 30
No,
centimetres is what you said.
And would you be able to hear ultrasound?
No.
There you go. Are you able to listen to that as a human being? Like, full stop. No, doesn't matter what age you are.
I don't believe so, no.
That's what I mean. So it wouldn't be ultrasound.
Yeah, it would have to either be something of mixed frequency or the wrong frequency, basically. That's what we're saying, isn't it?
Yep, so you keep covering the bit I'm going to go on to next, but as you said, you could have two slightly different frequencies and kind of converge the tones, and this could create a low-frequency sound wave. So maybe that would result in infrasound weapon, which could explain the symptoms.
I mean, maybe. Again,
just
it's really
in
hard to
theory, how the
argue
technology
against,
could
isn't it?
work.
Yeah. I just feel like if you've got something as complex as that, how is it going to be so small that it's not noticed?
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it?
Like, it's just, like, that sounds to me like, okay, yeah, fair enough, the technology might exist, but it's going to take it's going to have a power source to produce the waves. It needs to cause some crystal oscillation or however it is that ultrasound is produced. And then that's, the only other thing that I'm kind of thinking the whole way through this is, what happens if there is some sort of technology that they've been using, but the technology itself has a power source and the power source makes a hum? You know, like when you get a cheap charger from something, for something,
or
and it makes
not even a cheap charger, like a massive MRI machine.
Yeah, but again, I'm
Anything
just thinking in terms
electromagnetic.
of how portable it would be. I'm thinking if you had something smaller that maybe, I don't know, obviously it's a fictitious example completely, but if there'd been somebody in his room who'd plugged in their ultrasound scanner into his wall socket and then fired a beam at him and then quickly unplugged it and ran away, and he was like waking up because he heard the hum of the cheap power source charger, that might explain it. Case solved.
No.
Okay. Solved
No,
already.
because you... Well, I don't know, actually, because...
I'm glad you said no.
No, I see where you're going with it, because an MRI machine, they are super loud.
Yeah, they're huge.
They're really loud, but that can damage your hearing. But those things are fucking massive. Like, you're not getting that into a hotel room here. And then
No, it's not
removing
going to
it
fit in his
very
hand
quickly.
luggage.
You have to
Exactly.
put the guy in it as well.
I just love the idea that his bed is an MRI scanner. He hasn't realised.
He's literally
like,
had the
forms around
MRI machine around him as he was starting to wake up. They just wheeled it out very quickly.
No, it like folds into the floor underneath the bed.
Oh, that was so cool.
The hotel room is set up like that.
I am disputing basically the power source thing. You'd need to have something incredibly powerful. Yeah, you'd have to have something massive, like huge, like an MRI machine or something, I feel, for a transformer to be that loud. Like, I'm thinking that because of my guitar amp. It's a big, like, 100-watt amp, and then you can sort of put your hand over it and feel it vibrating very slightly. When
it hums, doesn't it?
And it hums very slightly, and that does actually come through a speaker. So that's... When you plug it into the cab, it amplifies the transformer buzz, as well as obviously the guitar tone and the input and the signal and everything. But if you just don't have a guitar plugged into it and you put it on like overdrive, it's boosting that feedback that's coming from the transformer. So maybe that's how they're doing it.
Yeah, but like if you blast that at someone for half a minute, is that going to make them ill long term?
You haven't seen my amp.
I doubt it.
Honestly, joking aside, I don't think whenever I practice, with like a live band or with just playing by myself, I've never put it over nowhere near halfway, and it's more than loud enough.
Yeah, but we're going back to high volume stuff again, and then the problem with that and witnesses. Like, no one else in the hotel said they heard anything.
Yeah. I don't know, within some reason, you can direct the sound. Like, again, I'm surprising myself with more I know, actually, about sound physics. But you get amps that are closed back, for example, and the whole idea is that the speaker directs it completely forward, pushes the sound forward. You know what I mean? So you can
but it'll
direct
still
sound.
be quite a wide angle, though, won't it?
Yeah, you could still hear it from behind, but nowhere near as loud as the front.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I'll move on to the next thing. I think we've kind of exhausted our knowledge on secret sonic weaponry.
Yeah.
So, so the next sort of explanation maybe is some sort of exposure to toxic chemicals, like pesticides, maybe drug use. Since we've got such a wide range of symptoms, this could be a possibility.
Could it?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of these ones that's really hard to disprove, but a poisoning of any kind will give you any set of symptoms, as we covered recently, isn't it?
Yeah. But how would that make people hear sounds?
The sound could be completely unrelated, like Stuart said before.
Yeah.
Could just be like a weird car sound you heard outside, and then it happened to...
There's been a couple of things where we've actually disputed evidence like that, and we've turned around and gone, well, actually, these could be completely unrelated. So it's the only, it's a way to make theories make sense. And it does make sense that the symptoms were coming from pesticides, but because this was going on and there was a massive uproar about it, that's where people have linked it to that.
Yeah, I mean, like, imagine if there was some sort of like toxic chemical at the embassy in Havana, and it just happened to affect a lot of people.
Yeah.
And some of them said, "Oh, I heard a weird sound," but it's unrelated.
But we said there was a bit of a barrage of tests, wasn't there? So if nothing was picked up on the tests, and no one of the local population complained of it, unless it was like in the food, and it was the food that the guests were served, how would it get to a very specific cohort of people?
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem with it. I mean, these tests were done a bit afterwards, though. There was quite a gap between the initial story and then the press getting the hold of it, and then all these medical teams coming in and doing all the sorts of sciencey stuff.
Sciencey stuff. We like sciencey stuff.
Mm-hmm. A problem with this, though, is that no traces of any such substance has ever been found in the bodies or homes of those affected by Havana syndrome. If all the cases were in the same location, maybe it's more likely, but since we've got a large number of cases across the world, it makes it less likely. Because remember, we've got cases in China, there's one in the Guangzhou embassy.
Yeah.
A US official.
Uzbekistan and Russia.
Uzbekistan, Russia, all sorts of places.
Yeah. I was just about to say, I don't know whether or not you're coming on to it, but the whole theory about there being some sort of insect-borne illness was what I was going to wonder if you were getting to with regards to Cuba, but it kind of, the geography of the spread of cases kind of instantly crushes that any theory with that regards. I was just thinking, like, is there any sort of local, like how we were saying before about like a mosquito bite or whatever, just some sort of local illness, a bit like how we didn't really know what Zika was and then suddenly everyone was talking about it. Is it one of these weird illnesses that actually there were some precursor cases to, and actually it's just one of these weird tropical diseases, but actually it just doesn't fit, because I just don't understand how the same illness or the same tropical disease can live in Cuba, China and Uzbekistan all at the same time. Three very different climate locations.
An interesting thing about this that I noticed is, as I was looking at all the different news articles whilst it was going on, it seems like they didn't really investigate this theory as much as they could have been. Possibly because of political issues, the US seemed to go whole hog in on an attack by a foreign government.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of see why they would do that. If they think that their diplomats are under major threat, you're going to assume that it's for political gain.
I feel like it's very possible that they could have made it up, either intentionally or accidentally. You know what I mean? Like, it's very easy to point the finger just because they're in, obviously, a different country, and it could feel like it's an attack or something. But then I feel like there's just there could just be a lack of knowledge on exactly what's going on, so they're just panicking, pointing the finger instead of intentionally.
Yeah, it definitely felt panicky.
Yeah. What if it was intentional?
Oh, what, as in used as a way to
make it look like it was Cuba?
Finger. Yeah.
What, and they knew the real reason why it was happening, but they pointed the finger at Cuba anyway.
Well, yeah, it sounds like a very good way to get out of doing, like, experimenting on your own people, blaming it on someone completely unrelated.
Oh, okay. I didn't
Oh,
think that's
okay,
where
you're
you were
going
going
that way.
then. Yeah. I thought you were going to say that they were fully aware of exactly what had happened, in the sense that it was a plan and all the constellation of symptoms that people had described were all a fixed set of symptoms that they were told to describe, and that's why all their own tests and investigations all came back normal. And actually, it was used as a way to create something to target Cuba with, is what I thought you were going to go with.
I mean, you could go that way with it.
Yeah, it's a bit conspiracy theory, but
Because it just sounds like if you create a fictitious scenario where Cuba are the bad guys, and the result of that is that America gets some sort of kickback from creating that situation, and it's around the commencement of a new presidential reign, particularly from somebody unstable,
what a
you
bold
wonder whether or
statement.
not... Pardon?
It's a bold statement.
You wonder whether or not it was done for even as a diversionary tactic. Like, think of how often people will focus on one issue because it's been raised in the press, even though something else significant has just happened.
Yeah.
And it'll be like, I don't know.
Well, like Jeffrey Epstein and COVID. Am I right?
I mean, yeah, sure.
Pretty much.
No, but that is... Yeah, there's been a couple of conspiracy theories around that, saying...
Oh, there's been many.
Well, yeah. No, around, obviously, yeah, around COVID in particular, but I'm just thinking of that, you know, the idea that people are saying, like, not just Jeffrey Epstein, but there's a massive thing about famous people being child sex offenders.
Yeah, like a whole ring sort of thing going on.
And yeah, and like that feels like no one's talking about it. And I feel like it's something we should really be talking about.
No, but these are rich people. We can't talk about them like that.
Exactly. Let's make a virus. Or let's not make the virus, but because I don't believe it was orchestrated. That's another video maybe when it's
Topic
appropriate.
for another day, yeah.
When it's appropriate and when we can do it comfortably. But like, it's easy to, like you just said, like, oh God, this thing's just popped up. Let's make everyone focus on that and distract. Like, that's really possible.
Okay, you heard it here first, guys. COVID was invented to take your eyes away from the child sex ring of Hollywood.
Have you not heard that before?
I mean, it rings a bell, but...
Yeah, it's one of those ones that rings a bell. It's not something that I would deliberately look into, but...
I mean, I don't really recommend it, but it's
yeah,
not
you'll
good
get very
reading.
depressed very quickly.
It's not
Okay, let's move on then. Okay, so in October 2017, the press released a recording of the sound, which was supposedly heard by some of the embassy workers. And I have a link for you here on YouTube for you to listen to.
Oh, you got the sound.
I have the sound. I've obtained it.
I have the power.
I suddenly have a headache, and it's right around my temples, and I've got vertigo.
I hate that noise. Oh my God.
It's horrific. That noise is horrific.
That to me sounds like insects.
Ah, interesting thing to say. Because some biologists heard it and also thought it sounded like insects, maybe crickets.
Yes.
So, they compared the recording with data from the Singing Insects of North America database, which is apparently a thing.
Oh my God.
Hang on. Give me that one again.
The Singing Insects of North America database.
Okay.
Synab.
Synab. It's a very
Took me a
useful
second, I
thing
got
on
the
the internet
abbreviation.
if you're
Wait,
a
what did you
cricket
say it was?
biologist.
What's the abbreviation, Sean?
Synab.
Where's the B come from?
Synad.
Oh, Synab. Oh, God. Please cut
I'm
that
not
out.
cutting that out. Not staying in.
Oh, God.
Yep, so they did a cross-reference search. They did some typing on the keyboard, and they found out the sound matched that of the Indies short-tailed cricket.
Ooh, okay.
So the only explanation for this is that crickets have started their plan for world domination.
And they thought to invade Cuba first.
Yes.
I like how, following good foreign policy from America. The crickets have gone. Let's take over Cuba. Let's try and assassinate Castro.
No, they're taking advantage of the rocky relationship between two political powers.
Are you sure they're not trying to get Castro?
I mean,
I'd like you to guarantee me that the crickets aren't after Castro.
when did Castro die? I should know this.
The crickets might not know that.
Can I just say it's really tickling me when you give a theory and then you say the only explanation is XYZ. Every single explanation you give that is whatever, it makes me laugh every time.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous.
Because the only explanation for this is
that's
that
what
the
I'm
crickets
going
won't take over.
Yeah, Castro died in 2011, so the crickets were a bit late.
Oh, they didn't read. Maybe they weren't on Wikipedia yet.
I mean, crickets are on Wikipedia.
Did Castro have pet crickets?
Maybe he did.
Alex
They're
hasn't
the
done his research.
descendants.
They were his slaves.
Oh, it's dark.
That got
there.
dark very quickly.
Oh, wow. No, I think...
Let's go back to the light and talk about the crickets again.
I think, like, actually hearing that sound, that doesn't sound metallic. Like, it could definitely... That could definitely be made by a computer.
I mean, any sound could be made by a computer, right?
Yeah.
What does it sound like to you, Sean, when you hear it?
To me, when I heard that, it sounded like being on holiday, walking home at night in something like a Mediterranean country like Spain or something like that has insects, and you can just hear crickets or grasshoppers or some kind of insects. Obviously, because I wouldn't be able to see them there and then.
No, you need the SINRAD for that.
Synab.
Synad.
Oh my god, what's wrong with you two?
He owned you.
I think you said that correctly then.
I think I did.
Yoju. Yonju. Oh, God.
Yeah, but it's definitely...
Where did the end come from? Where did the end come from?
That's not what I said!
It's definitely a high-pitched sound, so it's not infrasound.
Yeah.
But it's not ultrasound either, because we can hear it.
Yeah. I think it's insects.
What I think it sounds like is when you've been to a gig and you come out of the gig at the end and you get that ringing in your ears noise.
Yeah, like shell shock sort of sound.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, where you've been kind of had a loud noise sustained for a long, long time, and then it's like it's gone, and your brain kind of fills in the gap.
Yeah, but apparently that's the sound of blood going through your ears.
Oh,
is
great.
what I've been told.
Really?
Like it's just your natural blood pumping through parts of your ears, like close to or your actual bits that you hear with. Apparently, when you are. When you have that kind of shell shock sound, or if you've been at a gig and you're suffering from that sort of tinnitus sound, apparently that's what the sound is. It's actually the blood pumping.
Fair enough.
Interesting.
Anyway,
That's what I kind of think it sounds a little bit like. It's a little bit more shrill, isn't it? Like it's.
that's why for me it's not like I know exactly the sound you're thinking of, and for me that's not. I've never had it that intense. So maybe you do get it like that. Obviously, it makes a good point because I'll never be able to hear what you can hear, if that makes sense. Because
that's deep.
Well, it is. I can never feel what you can feel, but you know what I mean. Like I can't tell you you're wrong because you might actually be right. But I've never heard it that intense for me. I just hear like a high pitched noise and that I can zone out.
Yeah,
it could be
it's
that.
Definitely uncomfortable. That
it could be that is that a direct recording of the sound, or is that a reconstruction?
Supposedly, I don't exactly know where they got this from. The press apparently obtained it from somewhere.
That's...
So it could literally just be a recording of a cricket, for all we know.
I mean, it could be a recording of a cricket.
It could be.
Both disputing that and supporting that, to be fair, because it could actually be a cricket and it was a real recording of it, or they just recorded a cricket and it was fake. I don't know. But
scientists took that recording and they reversed engineered it, doing some sciencey stuff.
And they heard
and they came up
the Beatles.
with a new theory. They heard the Beatles from an alternate universe. No, they came up with a new
No,
theory.
because they're insects, Alex.
They came up with a new theory.
It was a beetle.
He's just
Called-
ignoring me.
Intermodulation distortion, which sounds cool.
It does sound cool.
That
It sounds
is
like a
cool.
great band name.
Mm.
I think it's a bit of a mouthful for a band name. to be
Intermodulation
honest.
distortion. Nah, it's like black metal, death metal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this theory kind of says that ultrasonic signals from everyday devices, such as motion sensors or burglar alarms, may have crossed the signal with secret surveillance equipment, and it made that sound. Given the political history between the US and Cuba, it's not a shock to think that they may be secretly recording each other. I think I read somewhere that US nationals are briefed to be aware that they may be being secretly recorded at all times.
That makes sense to watch what
That
you're
would
saying.
make sense.
Yeah, so if you imagine some Cuban intelligence agency has bugged this guy's hotel room, and the equipment has like messed around with a burglar alarm or, I don't know, a smoke alarm in the room, and it's made this sound.
I feel like that's kind of what you were saying before, Stu, about them looking for bugs, but like indirectly. Like accidentally picking up on the bugs. That does make a lot
Yeah.
of sense. Like that's actually kind of feeding back into what I was saying about the amp stuff. Like the sound being amplified. So if there's any
it's like
sort of feedback.
it's an
coming through-
unintended sound, isn't it?
Yeah, but the actual recording devices wouldn't have speakers, but it makes sense that the frequencies that they're picking up and transmitting, because they'd always be recording and transmitting in theory.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense, yeah. That there's
Yeah.
something that is in the hotel that they weren't accounting for, and it makes sense that it's happening outside of Cuba.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
these are embassies, they're
And
want to
it's,
spy on each other.
to be clear again, it is embassies all across the world.
And
Yes,
that guy's
that I'm
house.
aware of, yeah. I think it's
Okay,
all
well-
embassies.
The fact that you're telling me that it's specifically embassies, like as far as you're aware, it's embassies, tells me that it's probably embassies. It's got to be spy equipment.
Yeah, it sounds quite reasonable, I think.
I think the thing that links the location, so obviously it's embassies, but that guy's house too, would be like motion censored lights. You know, like when you go back to your hotel room and you open the door and the light comes on because there's a motion sensor tracker above the door. Like you could quite easily think that one of those in every embassy room, but also the guy that was the anomaly that we know about who wasn't at an embassy could well have a burglar alarm or
Yeah, you could
or
have
even just exactly the
smoke
same
alarm,
thing. Just
an
smoke
alarm
alarm.
clock,
Yeah.
anything.
Mhm.
I don't think the fact that in my head, well, as you were talking about, I was thinking, oh, what about the red herring of the guy in the house then, who's not at the embassy? But actually, I don't think he is a red herring. I think he's just somebody else that has the kind of the same kind of equipment, just in a different context.
Yeah, and they could very well just have bugged his house
Hmm.
if he's an important US embassy worker. And this theory kind of says that this is the explanation for the sound, but it's unrelated to the symptoms. Because a sound like this wouldn't make you ill long term.
Okay.
Yeah.
I genuinely feel like me personally, I've lost sight of that going through this episode. Like I completely forgot about the long-term symptoms, but just
Yeah,
kind
I
of
did as
presumed
well.
that they would make sense. So that's thrown me off again. The sound of insects as well, would that have a long-term effect?
No, because there's places all over the world, like you said, Spain and South America and China,
Exactly,
all
yeah.
places with loads of insects all the time, and people don't get ill from them long term. That I know of, anyway.
Yeah. So it's got to be two separate things.
Yeah, this is just providing an explanation for the weird sound. That's
Yeah.
literally all it's doing.
Yeah.
But once again, this theory was not taken seriously because US politicians were convinced these incidents were malicious.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again,
Which is a shame because I think this is quite reasonable.
Yeah.
the
Again,
explanation.
though, it lends gravity to the whole point that it's a political diversionary tactic. It's let's all focus on this and ignore something else that's happening. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if the day that these were being talked about in the press, some bill was sneaked through commerce that said, let's revoke everybody without insurance ability to be able to get healthcare or something, like something that costs the government money that the government really doesn't want to say, oh yeah, by the way, we're cutting this. So let's make a big song and dance about something else, use it as a big focus and cull something that we no longer want to pay for without people finding out about it until the dust has settled on the, oh my god, we're being attacked from overseas moment.
Yeah. I mean, I couldn't say, but sounds like a thing that could happen. Right, so the next thing I've got is a 2020 report by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering and Medicine, and these guys came to the conclusion that the most plausible explanation for Havana syndrome is directed pulsed radio frequency energy, aka beaming microwaves at a person's head.
How long do you know how long to cook them for?
It says on the back of the person.
Ah, classic.
Yeah, it's like at the back of
Do you have
the
to
neck.
prick holes in the lid, though?
No, that people come with lots of holes anyway already.
Oh, that's true, yeah, I suppose.
They're pre-holed. Yeah, so we're back to sort of like spy technology stuff. So in theory, when delivered at the right frequency, microwaves can be heard by people, and this kind of like works by raising the temperature inside your ear, and it would result in an acoustic wave of pressure, which would be noticeable as sound, and this is called the Frey effect. In theory, this can mess you up by disrupting electrical and chemical processes in the brain, a bubbling of fluid inside the ear making its way to the brain, resulting in effects similar to the bends.
Okay. That's
So-
an interesting one.
I cannot say how accurate that is, but apparently this is stuff that can happen if you beam microwaves at someone's ear.
That would, to me, that kind of, purely from a thought point of view, not obviously somebody being inside a microwave, but somebody having focused potentially harmful waveforms targeted at them would make me think more about the long-term damage being reasonable. Because if somebody's inner ear is being vibrated around by being heated up, then if you've already got a predisposition to having some maybe age-related hearing loss, permanently needing a hearing aid after that sort of insult would kind of make sense.
Yep.
I'm thinking, remind me of the other symptoms again.
So they're all sort of like vague sort of things, so like headaches, nausea, dizziness, problems with balance.
Yeah, so
memory loss.
the headaches and nausea, I was thinking like vertigo. As soon as you were saying that, like maybe it's affecting your ears are like one of your best sources of balance and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, your ears and eyes work together.
Yeah. So if there's
If you knock off one, you get vertigo. That's what normally happens.
yeah
And usually the cause of vertigo is an inner ear infection where the fluid is moving around. So if you disrupt that flow of fluid, you getting vertigo is quite explainable.
yeah
So this wouldn't be the first time US Embassy workers have been exposed to microwaves. For
Go on.
23 years, from 1953 to 1976, 100 metres from the US Embassy in Moscow, the Soviet Union transmitted low-power microwaves at the eastern side of the building.
What?
why?
For 23 years. You know, just to see what would happen.
What happened?
Nothing really. I mean, the US government quickly found out what they were doing, but they kept it on the down low because they also wanted to see what effect it would have on their own citizens.
Oh, Christ.
Wow.
It took them 11 years to install shielding against the microwaves. They did that in 1964. So, I mean, something must have been happening for them to admit they were going to put shielding in. Or it came out in the press, I'm not sure, one of those two. The beams were far lower intensity than that of a microwave oven, and there were never any observed effects on the health of the embassy staff. However, with the rate technology advances, it's possible that some sort of microwave weapon has been developed.
Is it see, the fact that the staff didn't get sick is either a cover-up or they just genuinely didn't get sick, and therefore it wouldn't have done anything, and why should it suddenly do something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but this was far away. This was 100 metres away.
But
And it was a
23
very
years.
low power.
Like, somebody who's working as a bellboy for 23 years in a hotel, or on the front reception desk, surely is going to be the person that shows symptoms
Yeah, in theory, if there's any sort of like effect this could do to a person.
I mean, yeah, it's really hard, isn't it? Because that person might have died. They might have been replaced by somebody. It might have been, they had a heart attack, and actually what they died of is their organs being microwaved.
Lovely.
God damn it.
Yeah.
To do it for like 23 years, though, and no one noticed.
I just love that. I mean, they noticed. The government knew.
Okay, yeah.
They were just like, let's find out what happens as well. Or,
what's the worst that could happen, eh?
quick, write that down. We'll do it back to them for 24 years this time. Because we have to one-up them.
Wow.
Yeah, so the last thing I've got, which I'm surprised hasn't come up already, is mass hysteria.
Ah, yes.
So because we've got such a range of symptoms, a diverse range of symptoms, it suggests a psychological cause rather than a physical one. So we return to the big theory that we talked about in our episode on the Hollingwell incident, conversion disorder or mass hysteria. And for those people who didn't listen to that or have forgotten, mass hysteria is the rapid spread of illness, signs and symptoms among members of a cohesive social group for which there is no corresponding organic origin. So essentially stress that strikes a close-knit group, like an embassy, that is being told by the government that they're currently under attack.
Yeah, that actually fits quite nicely. I'm surprised we haven't thought about that, actually. I think the symptoms of mass hysteria, though, still shouldn't reflect long-term illness, but they certainly would reflect a scattering of symptoms among the same population, like you said in the definition.
Mm-hmm.
Especially those that have then got a heightened awareness of the issues, presumably much more likely to have a predilection for them then.
Yep. I mean, not everyone has had long-term problems. I couldn't say the exact numbers of people, but a lot of people just had some symptoms for a bit and then it went away.
Yeah.
So it could just be some guy was predisposed to having tinnitus anyway.
Yeah,
and it just
there's
developed.
A certain amount of the inevitable illness that person was always going to get because of their genes and lifestyle choice. And then that's genes with a G. I almost said with a J then. I was trying not to say it before Sean tried to get a joke in.
I was so close.
So close. I think the thing about mass hysteria is that it a lot of the examples that we gave during Hollingwell were about things happening at the same time, whereas we don't obviously have that exact spread of dates for when people experienced what, do we here? But I think if you were to say to somebody, if you go in that hotel, you're going to hear a weird noise and you're going to have a headache, that's probably just going to happen. And it might not be the weird noise that you think it is, but because somebody's told you what noise you're going to hear, a noise that maybe kind of sounds like it, maybe a slight ringing, maybe even like the person next door leaving the dial tone on the phone and it just going on and you thinking that that's the noise, makes you have that cluster of symptoms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've got a high-pressure environment, the US Embassy, with a large number of staff being undercover spies. And again, they've got this constant fear of being listened in on by foreign governments. If you imagine they've heard, I don't know, Jerry in accounting last week heard a weird sound outside his house and now he's fallen ill. And also, Johnny in sales was in his hotel room and he also heard a weird sound and is now fallen ill. You're going to be on the lookout for weird sounds, aren't you?
Yeah. And then it's almost that, like, is it psychosomatic? As in, is your brain willing you to hear the noise so that you almost conform to a sense of norm as well? It might be a case of, why am I not being chosen? Why am I not hearing this? Why am I not being targeted as well? Like that weird kind of counter side to it, which is if you know that you're undercover and you know that you're also undercover colleagues or colleagues maybe that you don't know are undercover but are probably assuming that they're undercover and it's all like spy and whatever, you're probably going to be thinking like, oh, I'm next, and therefore any unusual experience is going to give you the symptoms that you've been hearing about, like you said.
Yep. And to make it worse, as the rumours of the initial cases spread through the embassy, the government was almost lobbying employees to come forward who had similar symptoms, so they could get more data for their studies and stuff.
It's like confirmation bias.
Yeah.
It's basically, oh yeah, I had that. I had a headache last week. And, oh yeah, a noise. Yeah, I probably did hear a noise while I had the headache, actually.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think, I don't know, it's so... I'm still torn between, like, it's definitely not insects. Like, the sound sounded
What
like
do you mean?
It was proven, Sean.
Yeah.
It's definitely not insect. I don't know. To me, it sounds like insects, but...
Wait, what?
Hang on. For me, when I heard that noise, it sounded like insects. But if it is insects, it's definitely not having that effect on people.
Yeah, we can assume so.
Yeah.
Unless the insects have invented a microwave ray.
I've just listened back to that noise again, and it sounds like, to me, like the noise the laser makes in James Bond when it's coming up towards his groin.
Yeah, it's like a generic laser sound, isn't it?
Like, it literally, if you listen to it back and picture that scene in your mind, it literally, you can imagine the laser going...
Yeah, I mean, they've repurposed it to be a sound weapon instead.
Exactly.
Of a groin-burning weapon.
A groin-burning weapon.
Groin. It fits the theme of the spy stuff, but...
What, groin-burning?
Groin-burning.
Like, I'm thinking, just like taking a step back, it's got to be intentional. You know, talking about
You think so? You think it's some sort of like...
Yeah, it's very
espionage stuff
specific
going
on where it's happening. It's embassies.
Yeah, but it's a stressful place, isn't it?
Yeah, but I know it's your job to disagree with me, to start a dialogue, but no, it's got to be intentional. No, I think everything feels like it is intentional. It's not random consequence. Like, I'm still going back to how I think it's, you know, feedback in from other equipment in the room, maybe, if they're actually getting listened to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But I don't know. And then, like, I think the long-term effects of it with the nausea, I think definitely the sound can cause... Oh, I don't know. I'm so conflicted with this one. I don't know where to go with it. I think what I was trying to say, sorry, is like the long-term effects, I feel like wouldn't be associated with anything that would cause the sound. But then we were talking about the nausea stuff and vertigo, and I don't know.
Yeah, so much like all of the other theories I put forwards, rather than waiting for data and expert analysis, the government quickly pushed it aside, and the press jumped straight back to malicious intent. The problem with mass hysteria, which we've kind of discussed already, is there's no physical evidence for it, really, and it hasn't really been researched very much. So it's kind of hard to say one way or the other whether it's at effect in this story, if you get me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's all of the possible explanations I've got. Sean, are you still thinking it's something malicious?
Yes.
Have you been swayed by the press?
Not specifically by the press, just like my own...
By me?
By...
Recounting
I make my
the
own
press?
decisions, damn it. But all the information I've got is from you, so yeah, you've influenced me.
Excellent.
I am thinking it's something malicious. I think, you know, what I've just said about how it's quite localized, and why aren't other people hearing it all over the world? If it was accidental, why is it localized to specific, you know, to embassies?
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Stuart?
I'm torn between I actually really like the intermodular distortion theory.
Yeah, I do as well.
I'm either going to go with the intermodular distortion theory just because I think it just sounds like it could happen. But then there's a big part of me that thinks no matter what the explanation for how the sound came about, I definitely think it was a diversion tactic. Because there's so much that the government get away with by selective journalism and selective representation of what's happened. And America's not the only one that are guilty for it. But when I think of something awful that's happened, and you see a Fox News broadcast, everything is, like you said, whole hog. This is the answer. There's no independent thought. This is what you're being told it is.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether or not that's been, whether or not that something has happened and the press have said, oh my God, this is exactly what's happened, or whether or not it's not real and it's been a story given to the press so that the press could say, oh my God, look at this thing. Either way, I reckon, however the circumstances of how the symptomology has all come about, I definitely think that something's been sneaked. Something's happened that should never have happened, or something happened that the government would really struggle to get through if there were eyes focused on them. So I think that's probably what I think. That's really putting my conspiracy hat on. But I think in terms of how the sounds come about, maybe the intermodular distortion. I do quite like the theory overall. I like it more than crickets. I got to be honest. When I listen to that noise, I don't hear the insects. I really struggle. Like, I'm literally imagining insects in my head as I'm listening to the noise, and I just can't. My brain just doesn't connect that noise with insects. It just doesn't sound right to me. And I think that's possibly why I'm complete left turn for Sean's right turn.
Yeah.
What do you think, Alex?
Are you saying that the singing insects of North America database is wrong?
Perhaps.
I mean, they cross-referenced it.
They have a website,
Stuart. The Indies short-tail cricket. Not a website, it's a database.
They have a database, Stuart.
Exactly.
No, just, sorry, Alex, before you do that, like it sounds like a lot of insects to me. Like when I'm comparing it to what I was saying about, when it's nighttime and you can hear them. Yeah. I feel like it's like a swarm, but then it still doesn't make sense that it would have been localized in a room unless they were all in like the vents. That would be terrifying.
There's a swarm of locusts.
Someone's fear out there listening right now.
Ugh.
Crickets in their vents.
Stop it.
Yeah, so I'm going to go different to you two, and I really think that mass hysteria is the big problem here.
Yeah.
I think it's something psychological.
That, actually.
We covered that quite a bit. I like it.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but
it's interesting how common it is. Like, I can't, I bet if you go back through a lot of the episodes, you can explain most of them by mass hysteria, like where Atlantis is, mass hysteria, pyramids, mass hysteria. Like, it just explains everything.
Exactly. Denver Airport, mass hysteria.
Yeah.
The Atlas Pass, mass hysteria causing suicide.
I want to say JFK's assassination, but it just sounds wrong to say it.
Call right back, Mary Celeste, mass hysteria.
Yeah. So I think we don't need to do any more episodes in the future. It's all mass hysteria.
Yeah. We're now called the Mass Hysteria Podcast.
Where we talk about the one explanation every single time for everything. Yeah, I just think just because it's so varied, each different story, and sometimes there's a sound, sometimes there isn't, sometimes there's a headache, sometimes there's tinnitus. I don't know, it just has to be some sort of fear spreading through the same group of people. Even if they are spread across the world, they're still US embassy workers. They're doing a similar job no matter what country they're in. But I also do like how confident this report by the National Academies of Sciences was about the fact that it has to be a microwave weapon. They were so set on it, it would be a shame to let them down and say I don't believe them.
I believe in you.
Yeah, so that's the end of our dive into Cuba, unless someone else can find a mystery related to Cuba. But I don't know of any others at the moment. But yeah, I enjoyed that. I particularly enjoyed the first part with all the crazy assassinations.
Yeah. To be fair, when you said dive in, then my first thought was grenades and clams.
Yeah, if you didn't, definitely go back to listen to the last one if you haven't. It's our magnum opus.
It's bonkers. It's
the
just
best.
ridiculous. I was creasing it listening to it. It's just so stupid.
I feel like you missed out the aliens.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Last theory, alien abduction. It's the sound. It's the rhythmic humming of the landing craft coming down to abduct you from your hotel room. Question mark.
Yeah, but all it means is that the landing craft are tiny and landed in the vents.
They flew into his ear.
There you go.
Oh God! Can we call it that?
Ramblings of a Madman is currently available on Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Podbean, Spotify, and YouTube. All the links are available on Twitter at Roam Podcast, that's ROAM Podcast. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Bye!